on to another episode of Early Education Nation. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Lee Mays, joined by...
Hi, everyone. I'm Joellen Johnson.
And we are so glad you guys are tuning in. First of all, thank you for all the feedback that you guys have given us on the podcast and ideas and support. And you guys are amazing. And it just, this is why we do it. It's all for the community and helping to grow this wonderful thing of early education that is becoming so important in everyone's life. So, yes. Very, very good. We have an interesting topic to talk about this week, and it's a topic that's becoming more prevalent, I think, in education by the year, and that is inclusion in the classroom, specifically for people with disabilities. And so we are going to use that vernacular for today. I know it had been, a lot of people have called it special needs for a long time, up into the 2020s, the early 2020s. But I know a national survey was done for people with disabilities, and about 13% said it was okay to be called special needs. The rest of them wanted to be called people with disabilities. And it makes sense.
Love that.
If, let's say I was, unfortunately in an accident and I broke my leg and from now on I have a limp, I'm still Ryan. I'm still the person you're talking to, but I now have a disability that's with me, and it does not take away of who I am as a person or what I've gotten. It's just the card that's been played. So we are going to kind of talk about students with disabilities and how we can have an inclusionary classroom going forward with that. So I guess we're going to kind of just start off the bat with a question, if that's okay.
Sure, let's do it.
How have we seen inclusion change over the years? And not just our years in early education, but it can go back to our high school years, elementary school.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And first I just want to say how much I love that you brought up that survey and how important it is to meet people where they're at and to respect the vernacular that they want. Yeah. So people with disabilities, like as a child growing up, it's like it was almost like it was us and them.
Yes.
There was a real separation in the school environment for anybody who had a disability. They just weren't. I'm not talking about a physical limp, like you mentioned, but like, maybe more of an intellectual...
Neurodivergent exactly.
Yeah, there was just like the special education classroom, and that was a separate portion of the school even. Like, we didn't have very much interaction. I think in our personal life, sure, we knew people that maybe had some disabilities, but it wasn't part of our school experience so much, at least for me. I don't know about for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why, is because there was so much separation. And very intentional separation. And there was a special building or usually a special classroom, and that was set to the side, and, never did the two interact. And that was really where we're kind of seeing the progress and growth of today, is there is interaction, because there is interaction in society. And there's so many benefits that we'll talk a little bit later on that comes with that. But and it was such a broad array of what special needs was, using that term back then. And it could be anything from, a birth defect up to neurodivergencies, up to, something like that. So you had all these students with different needs and different levels, all lumped into a classroom together with a teacher and maybe one aide trying to make it work. And and all it did was really put an onus on those students that they were different.
Yeah, it did. It labeled them as different. It gave, I think, a lot of normally developing children the opportunity to develop some bad habits and bad, perception of that they were special, because they didn't have those challenges in their life, and it caused. I mean, we hear about you watch old movies, the bullying and whatnot, and for children being different. Whereas as we get into the benefits, I think that some of it is that we are practicing more inclusivity, and so people aren't seeing it with quite that difference.
Yes, that's absolutely what it is. And that's good. That's the focus for it. So my master's degree is in special education and ABA, so the whole purpose of ABA being used with students that are on the spectrum is to have the most inclusive classrooms with the least amount of restrictions. That's always the goal for that. And so it's really this paradigm switch that we had from when we were kids growing up into what that looks like, and there's a lot of benefits.
Well, I think going into the let's say not the nowadays, but let's say a decade ago or 10 to 15 years ago, when we were both really getting seriously into the early education field, then it was almost a fear from educators to have that inclusivity in their classrooms. It was almost like, well, I don't think we can meet their needs, so it's just no, we don't do that. Whereas now, fast forward 2025, I think we welcome it. We're excited about it.
Yeah.
For absolutely. So many reasons. What was your experience in the classroom when you first started? Did you have?
Yeah, no, it was it. One thing that was really interesting was, I think when we see a person with a disability or a child with a disability coming in, and we think this is going to be the hardest thing I have to deal with. It's going to take so much of my day, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. I had students in my classroom where the only accommodation was they need to eat a snack at a certain time. Yeah. Because of that. I'm like, really? That's it? That's all I got to do? Mm-hmm. And the student can come be a part of the class and just have a normal learning day. And so, yeah, absolutely, we were willing to do that. I will say there are a wide array of needs for people with disabilities that sometimes schools can accommodate, that are not set up for that. We have teachers that aren't trained in certain special needs, quote unquote. And so they are just, they can't offer to the student what's best. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can kind of help out with that, get around with that a little bit.
But that's what we say now, right? It's like we welcome any child as long as we're able to meet their needs. Accommodate in the ratios that we have with the skills and knowledge that we have. Because really, at the end of the day, what we do is serve children and their families. And if we're not the best people to do that, we want to be upfront with that. Yeah, no,
that's absolutely right. We have to be very transparent. And one thing we do that I really love about our school is we send a form to the child's pediatrician saying, this is what we can accommodate. Mm-hmm. This is what we have. Are there any notes? And I would say, honestly, 7, 8 out of 10, times it gets maybe 9 out of 10. The paper gets sent back and says, yes, absolutely. They can work within this environment. Mm-hmm. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. So that's really, really good. Go ahead.
When you were mentioning, ABAs and that being your master's degree, we were seeing so many more ABAs in our school. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that has evolved?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So ABA, that stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis, and it's a behaviorism program. So basically it's based on a lot of things, but it's about bringing out the most pro-social behaviors in the client that you're working with. So that can be a lot of different methods what that goes through. But usually when an ABA is in the classroom with a child, let's say that's on spectrum disorder, and they will shadow the child so that the teacher will teach the class just as typically as they would on any other day. But let's say that child A needs help using the materials. The ABA is there to help with the materials, also to help guide them. They're working on speech while they're doing it. They're working on positive reinforcement while they're doing it so that behavior continues on. And then child C over here maybe needs some language. They don't understand it. Mm-hmm. So the ABA helps put it in different terms, kind of demonstrates for the child what it is. And that way, it in no way takes away from the teaching of the classroom, but allows those students to be right there in the midst of it, doing the same activities, learning the same concepts. So
wonderful. So it's really, it's not a detriment to the other students. And I know we're going to talk about some of the social emotional benefits as well. But just having that other person in there as a support for the child that's maybe has some neurodivergency or other disabilities is not taking away from the academic experience of the other children, which is fantastic.
Actually, in a way, enhancing it, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. But actually enhancing the experience. So for all the ABAs and occupational therapists and BCBAs that are going into the classroom, you guys are doing an amazing job. And a lot of people don't know about this business, but there is a very strong need for ABAs and BCBAs, which are board certified behavior analysts. And so they are spread thin, trying to hit all these caseloads and help out. And so thankfully more and more people are getting into the field to be able to assist these students that really need it and deserve it. So
that's fantastic. Yes, we do appreciate their service.
Absolutely. So I guess the question would be, since we brought that up, then what would inclusion look like in a typical classroom for us? And I think we kind of talked about it.
Yeah, so in early childhood, at our school, with inclusion, it might be, again, maybe the child isn't to a place where they need a full-time aid, but they just need special accommodations, like you mentioned, with a snack, or perhaps maybe they need fidget toys during a morning meeting, or they can't sit during morning meetings, so they need to be standing over in the back, but they're still listening. But and we'll talk about, I think, when we're explaining to other children how that impacts the rest of the class. And side note, it's a positive thing.
It is.
But when we're talking about those kind of accommodations, then we go from like the simple accommodations all the way up to having that full-time ABA with a child. And so really it's just meeting, again, the families where their needs are.
Yeah. If you ask me as a former teacher to look at my classroom and what an accommodating classroom would look like, I would pick something specific like morning meeting, where I'm sitting down with students. I might have 8 students in front of me sitting on the carpet listening for instruction. Another one is sitting at the table with maybe an occupational therapist. Another one is on a exercise ball bouncing to help with stimming, things like that. And so that is an inclusionary classroom. They're all getting the information. They're all hearing it. There's different ways of learning and assistance through that. But let's go ahead and talk about explaining that to students.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I was just going to go back to your bouncing on the ball. Okay, so let's say, Ryan, you're teaching that class. One of your friends is sort of towards the back, not in front of the morning meeting, but towards the back, bouncing on a ball. How is that? Is that distracting the other children? How do you handle that?
So one thing we can talk about is honesty with students. And it's something that we are very scared of as both parents and teachers, being honest with students. It is okay to use the word different. I know everybody's, don't use that. We don't use it.
We are different. You and I are different. We're different from...
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a former teacher that would not allow that word to be used in her classroom, and she meant it in the best way. But we talk about how we learn differently. I learn differently than you learn differently. We have different ways of learning for that. I might need to stand up when I hear a lecture being given to me, or I'm going to fall asleep. Somebody else is like, I don't want to stand up. All I'm going to do is think about how bad my feet hurt. I need to sit down for that. So we are all having different ways of learning. So we explain that to the students. Now, if the student says, well, that's not fair. I want to be on the exercise ball. Great. Plan a time for them to do that. Afterwards, when we get done, I'll make sure that you have a couple of minutes to sit on that, so you can see what it's like. Classrooms in the past, if like a child, there's all these like little inflatable pads called wobble pads, and they're kind of, I would say, 60% effective in the classroom. But if you're going to buy one, you can buy one for all the children to sit on. It's something for them to kind of fidget back and forth while they're listening and to hold attention. One thing that you really have to explain to students is when a child, and again, let's just use ASD, if a child is on the spectrum and shows a particular behavior, that behavior is not going to hurt you. And that's a big thing for that. When an ABA is in the class or an occupational therapist, if a child has something like a headbutting or things like that they might do because it's a form of stimming, they're there to block it. And they'll help block with a hand or a pillow or something like that until the child eventually thins out that behavior. But we have to explain to the other thing that, the way they move, the way they act, the way they sound on there is not because they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable. This is a different way for them to think and behave.
They're expressing themselves.
Exactly. Just as you are different from me and my friends and how you think and behave for it. So, yeah, it's very, very important for them to understand that. And it's going to kind of dovetail into the next question here for that. But what are the benefits? I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to say what are the benefits for people with disabilities. Let's start first with what are the benefits for the students without disabilities in the classrooms.
I think the empathy development. Yes. The realizing that not everybody is exactly like you is such a gift.
Yes.
Because you're learning those social emotional skills, those interaction skills that are going to benefit you for the rest of your life. And to have that experience at such an early age. And a lot of that is the communication, as you're referring to. It's that communication from teachers, from parents. And what a world we live in now. There's so many resources. And we've talked about books for different things in the past, but let's talk about all the books that are out there about children who learn different or different than you. And I think, I don't know this, we'll go back to exactly what you asked, but I think about it as a parent, how would I be if a child came home and said, oh, this child's in my classroom and they're doing this behavior and it's scaring me. I would definitely not deny my child's feelings.
Sure.
But I would hope that if I found out that there was a reason that maybe that child was having that, then I could help educate my own child of why that is the case. And what we have seen time and time again, right, is that the class rallies around that child.
They do.
So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
They form a very protective relationship. And I get kind of goosebumps thinking about it because I've seen it through so many years where I'm just going to make up a name here, but Johnny has, maybe he might be on spectrum disorder and he has to have a certain position in the classroom or something. if a child sits in that spot, the other children right away be like, no, that's Johnny's spot. Mm-hmm. That's where he has to sit. And it's a form of them taking care of him, making sure his needs are met.
Yes.
Maybe Johnny left his water bottle behind. They're going to run together, 2 or 3 of them, to grab it and bring it back to Johnny. Mm-hmm. And it's taking care of them. They become friends. And not to give, obviously we never use any names or scenarios on here, but we had some children a couple of years ago that a child was acting a certain way in the class, and it seemed almost a little bit frightening at first to them. And what happened was they immediately, I would say within weeks, turned it around the other way and started saying, my friend does that because that's how he says he likes me. Aww. Or my friend does that because, that's the way he feels better when he does that. I'm like, man, you guys get it.
Yeah,
we need to explain it to some adults.
Right?
You guys need to do that for me, yeah.
And that's why it's so wonderful that we have it in early childhood. Yeah. Because when you build those skills, that patience, that empathy, that sharing and caring at such a young age, that's going to translate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it goes to not only, I've been using, neurodivergence a lot, but it goes to things for people, like I talked about, with walking with a limp or having to use a crutch or being in a wheelchair or using special devices in the classroom. Students start to see it as that is an accessory of that person and not that person.
Yes.
And so that is really, really important. And then they'll start looking out for those things. That's Johnny's device, or that's, Johnny's crutch, or, he dropped it on the ground, I'm going to go pick it up for him, and it does teach that empathy. It teaches understanding. It teaches patience. It teaches inclusion. Mm-hmm. And guess what, guys? It teaches college prep. And I know that's really going to be like, what? Yes. When you go into your careers and you go into higher education as a student, it's very different. Mm-hmm. And why is it fair that my one team member gets a week extra because they've gone and applied for disability exception, which my own daughter has had to do for that, and I have to get this in at a certain time? That doesn't seem fair. Mm-hmm. Those questions start going away when you're used to understanding that people have to be accommodated differently to succeed. And that's the whole point of this. You start off young, they grow up with it their whole lives, they use it when they get into school, higher education, their careers, and now as a business owner, I'm not afraid to hire a person with a disability. I'm actually looking to do that because I understand the dedication and commitment they have and the battle they've had to do for their whole life, so they may actually be a better employee.
I love that. So. I also think for the children that have the disability, you spoke about your daughter. I have a child who has ADHD, and he owns it, and he's so proud of it, and it's just part of who he is, and he's embraced it, and he knows what he needs to do to navigate that. But if we, as parents or as educators, and he's had supportive educators throughout his life, had put a stigma on that and treated him differently for that, or he would not be, entering his junior year in college and rocking it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's done phenomenal.
Yeah, so I think that it's just empowering as well for our children to give them that, wherever they are, if they're the normally developing or the, or having children with a disability, either physical or neurological. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and it's been the same way, in our household. And having somebody, one of my children, for sure, and possibly another one too, that's an adult now, but having them with spectrum disorder and trying to figure out what they need. Again, going back to what I originally said, it's not a lot. Mm-hmm. It's just little accommodations here and there. And so kids are definitely willing to do that in the 100%. Classroom. It makes them more accepting for it.
Yeah, we're teaching them social acceptance of themselves and of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Let's flip it the other way. So obviously, what are the benefits then for a child with a disability?
Well, kind of tapping into that, that, hey, I'm in this crowd. I'm not, my disability doesn't define me.
Yes.
And so here I am in this classroom being able to do these exciting activities with all my peers, and I just think being seen.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah. I belong.
Yeah.
To this. I belong here at the school. I belong in this classroom. I belong in this curriculum. And I have someone here supporting me through all of it. So it's absolutely amazing. I would say there's a couple of big don'ts to do as parents.
Sure.
First of all, again, don't stigmatize. If your child tells you, going back to Johnny, use that random name, Johnny did this in class today. Ask them, how did that make you feel? Mm-hmm. Then ask them, why do you think Johnny did that? Mm-hmm. And if they tell you, well, my teacher said, which hopefully they did, my teacher said Johnny learns differently, he did that. Go with that and talk about how you learn differently. Talk about how, you don't do so well in the mornings and you do better in the evenings or, whatever. And we want to so easily throw that typical label on ourselves, but we all have to have accommodations, every one of us.
Oh, 100%.
So it's not fair to really put that stigma on a person with a disability when we have to have our own to get through the day.
I love that. And the example you gave just is that parent leaning into the conversation.
Yeah.
Not saying, oh, well, Johnny's just being naughty, don't be like Johnny.
Yeah.
But really seeking to understand,
yeah,
why do you think that is? And that's helping your child or the child in the scenario process their own feelings around it and maybe gain that perspective and understanding at a deeper level. I think it's very special.
Yeah, it is, for sure. And it kind of goes back to the whole thing that we've always talked about with race, culture, and color. Back in the day, it used to be, I see no color, and now it's, I appreciate the color. Well, I appreciate that there's differences between us, so we understand that. And it becomes less and less of something that's abnormal when it's something that's seen and experienced every day by everyone, both with the disability and those around supporting. So the more the better.
Gosh, I'm just thinking about, when I graduated college 30 years ago, just a hot minute ago, with my degree. One of the things I did was adult learning, right? Mm-hmm. My former career was in training and development and adult education in the corporate setting. But but basically my point is that I always knew adults learn different, right? We talk about it all the time. Adults learn different. Adults learn different. But I still think there's still some schools now, I feel like they're trying to fit children all into the same mold. Yeah. You need to learn it this way. This is the only way. There's definitely been improvement in that.
Oh, yeah.
But, we do appreciate in other parents and other adults those differences or understand those differences. Why we need to, really embrace that and consider that for children.
Yes,
more so.
Yeah, no, that's very, very good. I think kind of to follow up with all this, adults, what you consider being annoying to you, not from other people, but just the things that you see as annoying, for a child who is neurodivergent or born with a different disability on there, those annoyances are life-threatening to them. They feel like that when they're... Loud noises are amplified so much to them. The texture, the feel of things. Heard one in my education, a story of a student that did fantastic, was doing wonderful, and then all of a sudden had to quote unquote, the teacher had a freak out in the classroom, only to find out she had changed the paper that she used in there, and the texture of the paper was different. Oh, wow. It was scratchy on the skin. It was something that the child wasn't used to, and it caused them to act out. Now, us looking at that, we're like, what's wrong with this kid? Well, it takes some detective work to find out, so jumping to those conclusions quickly and just saying, no, we can't do this, you really have to have a lot of patience to understand. And then we'll go home and say, I don't like the TV, it's too loud, the light's too bright, I don't like the way my clothes fit, I've got to change. And we're doing the same thing, except we have the reasoning ability over that. So that's what we try to do with ABA, is to help students to live normal lives, to have the most pro-social behaviors, to not need to have this assistance around them. And it's amazing, I would say, in the last 10 years, the amount of flourishing for people with spectrum disorder.
Yes.
That they've got jobs and businesses and are actors and are politicians.
Yes.
And are doing all these amazing things. And so that happens with people saying, I'm willing to stand here and accommodate because I want to know who you are and give you a chance.
Yeah. I love that. All of it is so true and so powerful, and I'm just so excited for people to hear this podcast, because I think that if we continue to change the dynamic of what it means to have a disability or be different in your learning styles or your needs, it's just going to continue to really grow the next generation so that those opportunities continue to exist and expand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to bring one thing back around because we're getting close to time here at the end that we talked about kind of at the beginning. And this is my message for parents, because if you are the parent of a child with a disability, your life has been upside down, inside out, all around. It's doctor's appointments, it's psychologist appointments, it's you're I can't even imagine. Let's put it this way. You've had to deal with so much for that. There are times when schools, educators in typical classrooms have to stand up and say, I can't accommodate the needs of the child. I've tried everything I can. When an administrator comes to you, hopefully in a very trustful relationship, and says the school's not the right fit, it is not because the child is not wanted there. And I'll speak personally for us.
Yes, let's
I don't know other
speak
schools,
for us, because this is
so
true.
I'm going to speak for us. It is not because the child's not wanted there. It is because everything has been tried and exhausted. And if it's not, then it's probably not a good school to be in.
Right.
But we have tried to accommodate. We've maybe put extra teachers in the classroom. We've allowed therapists to come in. We've done, X, Y, and Z. And only then, can we be able to make the statement that we've tried all the things that are in with our power. So please, if that does happen, understand that it's not because your child's not wanted or not good enough. Although, in another school, maybe that's the case. Definitely not with us. And that the follow-up is going to be there. The next child that whether you have to put them in developmental preschool or something like that, that they can call us, they can ask questions, they can make us part of the situation there so we can help out with that. And so it's a very hard thing.
It is.
That my child can't at this moment be in quote unquote a typical classroom. I kind of hate using that word over and over again, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind for parents to have, and really take the resources that are given to you. We call it spectrum disorder because it is a spectrum, and I know I'm kind of focused on that because that's what my background is in, but just all with children with disabilities. But it's so big. And it's expanding, and it's done for insurance reasons and everything else. So if you can get the resources that are going to specifically target what your child needs, please take those.
Yes.
Please take
Advocate for your child. I mean, I have a friend who used to go to meetings at the school with a huge binder, and she'd walk in, and they knew she meant business, and they met those accommodations for her child without any challenge or issue because they knew she was prepared, because she was ready to say, this is what my child needs. And as Ryan said, I mean, we love all of our students, and we will do everything we can to make it the best environment for them. But if it's not the best environment, it's because we want what's going to help that child thrive.
And let us help you find a better situation. So it doesn't even mean for our younger students that later on they can't return, and then there is somebody to help them out or a different situation. So it's very, very important.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you guys. This is an important podcast. And I think, we go through this briefly. We do about a half hour. It's such a big issue. It's such a big topic. And for you parents out there that have been patient and kind and understanding, that have educated your students, your children, that are willing to include everyone into their daily life, you're giving them a benefit. Oh yeah, for sure. You're teaching them valuable life skills, and just keep asking those questions. Keep inquiring, making those inquiries with them to dig deeper, and then support them and support their friends in class too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Another episode in the books. Yep. So thank you guys again. Please, any comments you guys have or questions you have, throw them our way. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. So this is something that was interesting to us. But if you have another topic you want to put our way, just go ahead and shoot us a message or tell us in person, and we'll be happy to do it. All right, everybody. Thank you. And until next time, we'll see you later. All right, bye.